Do what thou will be the whole piece of law.
Okay, so I should be starting that video on this guy. Wanted to do him for a while, I've been kicking him down the road.
Why don't you ever cover women?
What do you mean, why don't I cover women? I'm planning on it. There's this one Soviet tank woman who I want to cover at some point. You know, weirdly cropped PNG of a Tiamat figurine that I got when I graduated college on discount from my local game store. You're being super nosy for a PNG of a figurine that I supposedly worship all day. Yes, I remember to tell them to like, comment, and subscribe. I know that's super important, especially early on. Yes. It helps my analytics. Oh, I know all the positives, and I think they do too, right? Respect their intelligence.
Buy me more gold!
You know, on my meager salary that I can only afford, well, you know, the old US minimum wage used to afford you like 2 ounces of gold per week, and, you know, now it's... I don't want to break out the calculator. Just know that I'll get you some soon, okay? When the price dips again. Okay, let's check the comments of my last video. Let's see. No, it can't be. I got a recommendation! Okay, I cannot deny my first one. So, what was originally going to be a video on someone else has now turned into a video on Robert Kennedy. So I hope you aren't tired of him yet. Now, I'm going to give a disclaimer. I'm going to give a verbal one and put it up on screen. These are going to differ from the official story, quote unquote. I'm not endorsing any of these theories. I'm mainly just explaining it so you can make up your own ideas, okay? My main thing is to present evidence. This is a lesser known conspiracy. There's not as many people who are invested in it per se, so I'm just here to lay out a general landscape. If you want to get into this yourself, that's your prerogative. I'm just here to give you a little primer on the subject because there's not as much pressure around this one. I feel a little more confident being able to present this without, you know, the computer god getting in on whatever I have to say. So, with that disclaimer out of the way, I want to give you, as per MERP 4874's suggestion, I'm gonna give you a little lay of the land. So, where to start a good conspiracy story, except at the beginning. So, let's go over some context and the official narrative, what the government wants you to believe.
Nothing bad ever happens to the Kennedys!
So, something to start off if you haven't watched the last video, here it is. But this one's going to be a little more scripted, mainly because I got some offline criticism about doing unscripted content is kind of bad, and I kind of agree. That video was a little rushed, so I'm going to cover my bases. You don't need to know a lot about RFK's past, except he was, like every American politician, in favor of Israel. He did some work for the Boston Examiner, and during this time, he basically foresaw the creation of an Israeli state and endorsed it because it would be a bastion of democracy in the Middle East, quote unquote. And his frenemy, LBJ, who, remember, denied him the vice presidency, and they kind of had a little rivalry going on. They're both pro-Israel candidates, right? In the United States, you have two options. You're either pro-Israel or you are religiously pro-Israel. I'm not here to make that judgment, but they're both pro-Israel. Now, why does this matter? So, Sirhan, the assassin, is a Palestinian activist. He's basically been pushed around his entire life. He's had a lot of accidents. Like, he had an accident on a horse, he survived a bunch of explosions, and he harbors this deep resentment for America. Namely RFK. I don't know why RFK draws so much ire. This just seems like, you know, the standard anti-Americanism of you support a country that is a malignant tumor on what I will call my rightful country. Okay, so editing room here. I've done a little more research since I recorded this, and the reason why Sirhan killed RFK, or the reason he states that he targeted RFK over any other politician, is that he says something along the lines of RFK was the champion of the downtrodden, and it felt like him sending military aid to Israel to kill Palestinians was the exact opposite of being the champion of the little guy. It's in an interview with Inside Edition. There will be a link in the description. It's a really great interview if you believe that Sirhan is the assassin. But anyway, back to the video. So it makes a lot of sense. He has this quote where he says, I had 23 years to make this decision, and I've stewed in resentment for that amount of time, and like I have no regrets doing what I did. Something along those lines. I'll put up the exact quote. But specifically, it was because of Kennedy's decision, or Kennedy's support, of 50 military fighter jets to Israel. Now, Sirhan said that this would cause direct harm to Palestinians, which he's probably correct. But if you think about that in the modern context, that's like nothing. America will just send like billions to Israel, 30 trillion to Israel, something like that. So that's all the background context you need. That's the motive. The modus operandi. No, that's not correct. You have the motive. So on the morning, this is like midnight of June 4th to like 12:30 a.m. of June 5th, RFK Sr. wins the California primary, giving himself 393 delegates. Now he's still losing to Humphrey, but people are super optimistic that he can pull out a nomination. He has a, let's say, very ragtag security detail. This security detail consists of William Barry, who is a former FBI agent, Rosie Greer, a football player, and Raffer Johnson, an Olympian for track and field, I believe. He's a gold medalist. So, gives this speech. It lasts about 8 to 10 minutes, depending on how you want to time it, because the CBS News recording is about 10 minutes long, but a lot of people will cite it starting at like 12:02 to 12:10. So he tries to exit through the predetermined route. He tries to go to the end of the ballroom, and William Barry, the FBI agent, says, change of plans, we're gonna go through this more secluded route, and redirects him towards the kitchen hallway. Now, at this point, they're joined up by someone who's going to escort them, the Maitre d' Karl Utrecher. I'm going to mispronounce a lot of people's names in this story, but he's German. And Kennedy loves interacting with people. That's something he's always been about. He's a populist Democrat. Well, saying populist Democrat nowadays is kind of, it has some connotations. He's more of a popular Democrat. There you go. And he's shaking hands with people. He's like super involved. And Carl, the maitre d', is escorting him. And he's accompanied by Barry, Greer, and Johnson, shaking people's hands. And there are a lot of eyewitness accounts. And this is where things get really messy. So I'm going to try and keep it as simple as possible. Carl has his wrist in his hand as he's walking RFK forward. He's shaking someone's hand. He's like trying to usher him along. And Sirhan comes from behind him, ambushing RFK and firing 3 shots before anyone can wrestle him to the ground. He falls out of Carl's hand, and Carl, Greer, and Barry wrestle Sirhan to like a radiator or a heater and just start bashing his hand to get the pistol out of his hand. Now, this pistol is an IJ Cadet 55A. This can fire up to 8 shots, and according to the official narrative, Sirhan discharges the entirety of the magazine before being effectively stopped. 3 of these shots will hit Kennedy. 5 will go into the crowd and wound 5 other people. Now, there was a nice quote that sums up Kennedy's wounds. This is taken from a book called 85 Days, The Last Campaign of Robert Kennedy, which is, I don't want to say the main source, but it is a big source that I used for this research part of the video. It goes, quote, "There were 3 wounds. 1 bullet had passed the mastoid bone and lodged in the midline of the senator's brain. Another lodged in the back of his neck, and a 3rd grazed his forehead. The first was the critical wound." End quote. Now, the fatal shot is estimated to be about 1 inch away. 2 bullets were lodged in Kennedy, the one being the one that lodged in the midline of his brain and the back of his neck, and the one that grazed his forehead would enter and exit. And as I said, the stray fire wounded 5 other people. Now, a bunch of people just want to kill Sirhan on the scene. He's grappled, like a bunch of people are punching him, kicking him. They want him dead. And for good reason. He's just killed one of the most influential people, although he doesn't know it yet, in the United States at the time. And one of the quotes from the book says, "Oh, we can't have another Oswald. meaning, we can't have the killer killed by someone else and then we'll never know the true story, even though a lot of people say in the moment that he deserves it. After Sirhan is arrested, he will be convicted for murder, and he tries to plead guilty a bunch of times. He has this cycle where he basically says, yeah, I did it, now just sentence me to whatever. And the court says no because they want him to have his day in court. Usually, if you get a lawyer, they're all over that stuff. They're like, yeah, give me that guilty plea. Let's get this over with, plead guilty, let's just get it out of the way, save everyone some time. But no, this is a big enough case that everyone wants to see Sirhan stay in court. And the state was originally seeking the death penalty by gas chamber. I didn't even know that was a possible execution method. I thought firing squad was a little barbaric. They usually do we'll sedate you and then give you a lethal injection of chemicals so you can just write it down, or the new nitrous oxide one where we'll just cut off oxygen to your brain through too much nitrous oxide and you'll die. But no, they wanted to put him in a gas chamber 20 years from when that was the style. But he made a plea deal for life in prison, even though his lawyers will, present all their evidence in front of the grand jury, which will be more important later on. But he's in prison, and just as a tail end to the official story, Sirhan talks with RFK Jr. And now, if you know anything about RFK Jr., if you took my suggestion to watch that video that I had in the last video, this may sound familiar to you because you'll know RFK Jr. is a huge conspiracy theorist, or if you follow the news at all. And this is no exception. RFK Jr. flagrantly denies that Sirhan is actually the killer of RFK Sr. So, what does RFK believe? Well, RFK Jr. The most commonly cited conspiracy theory for this assassination is the one that is the most common for the JFK assassination, which is there is more than one gunman. Now, what does that entail? Many eyewitness accounts conflict with each other. It's the whole study of people who go through traumatic events and they're asked to recite it at different time periods after the event, and their stories usually are not consistent. People claim that it's very super vivid in their brain, but very rarely is it consistent. Their stories will differ by little details or huge details. So some eyewitnesses assert that Sirhan came from the wrong angle. Remember how I said a lot of the lethal wounds came from right behind Kennedy? This is contested by some eyewitness accounts, saying that Sirhan came head on, missing his 3 to 8 shots, and he is responsible for the collateral damage, some of which ends up in the surrounding door frame or walls or other places that are either not found or destroyed by some various reasons. Now, how is this supported? He only had an 8-shot revolver. If only there were some audio recording. Oh, there is. Some Polish guy, Stanislaw Prucki, he made a recording on accident, allegedly, of this, which is honestly terrible. And this is the prime audio analysis clip. For the JFK assassination, it's video. Everyone's analyzing the video of the grassy knoll. For RFK, it's all about the audio analysis because almost no good videos with audio exist, much less anything that would give you a clear picture of what is going on. So this audio has been analyzed by a bunch of different people, but the one used in court, by the way, I will tell you, Kamala Harris is in this story. She's actually serving as the lead prosecutor for California against Sirhan, but that's kind of irrelevant. Audio analysis, right. So, the audio analysis is done by a Mr. Von Prague, and officially, in court, for Sirhan claims that up to 14 gunshots occurred. He says 13 to 14 before it's cut off by blood-curdling screams. Now, listen for yourself. I thought this was completely incomprehensible, so how about you take a listen?
We have a copy of that recording. Let's listen to part of that right now. It's very difficult to make out anything at all.
How many did you hear? Post it in the comments. No, but seriously, I would love to hear any, theories or thoughts that you have on this, because I don't see much discussion about it, except on the weird internet rabbit holes where you're looking for it. But anyway, to continue, this is used in court, and he could not have produced this many shots with an 8-shot revolver. Duh. So, who is the second gunman? Well, the main candidate for this is a man named Thane Eugene Caesar. This guy is a hired security guard for a private firm that was employed by the Ambassador Hotel for like 7 years before Kennedy even came to the Ambassador Hotel. However, he was well known to be a staunch Kennedy opponent, basically saying the equivalent of, oh, if RFK gets elected for president, he's gonna sell the country to communists and minorities for basically nothing. Which, remember, Kennedy was a big civil rights advocate. He was a staunch, I don't want to say a union advocate, a clean union advocate. He was very critical of people like the Teamsters, which I want to talk about later. But Caesar is the main candidate. Mainly because he's a staunch Kennedy opponent. He's a person who was there at the time, would have been able to maybe ambush Kennedy, because this is coming from Sirhan. Sirhan is in front of Kennedy. Kennedy is there. And then Caesar comes up from behind him and puts 3 in the back of his head, or 3 remotely in the back of his head. Now, what are the holes in this? Caesar himself states he carries a Rome 38 on the night of the assassination and that he did draw it. However, he did not fire it. Also, he did own an H&R 22 that he claims he sold 3 months before the assassination. However, the person that he allegedly sold it to still had the receipt. He produced it and he sold it actually 3 months after the assassination than before, as claimed. Also, in addition, well, I guess it is discrediting Caesar and bolstering Sirhan's argument, is that none of the bullets could be positively identified to Sirhan's LJ Cadet. A lot of ballistic analysis was done on these bullets, but none of them could be back identified to the Cadet 55A. Personally, coming from RFK Jr., this is what he believes. He believes Sirhan ambushed RFK Sr. from the front when Caesar opportunistically attacked Kennedy from behind, killing him. Because RFK Jr., remember, met with Sirhan to discuss it. He came out believing this theory. He also has listened to the audio and he says, yeah, I hear 13 gunshots and that's too many. Also, he publicly discredits the Warren Commission. But I mean, obviously you have to take whatever the government says with a grain of salt in this scenario, because it's, oh, we investigated ourselves and found no fault. Story as old as time, song as old as rhyme. Second, well, we just went from the second gunman. What do I call this one? It's about hypnosis. Oh, the classic name. The Manchurian Candidate. Well, if you don't know, the name for this is based off of the movie The Manchurian Candidate, where a political candidate is effectively hypnotized into winning a political backstabby type scenario. So this theory asserts that Sirhan was hypnotized to forget his actions, or was hypnotized to fire on a code word. Now, I couldn't find anything to support that second one, but I remember my coworkers said that he had some professional hypnotist who's really famous, was able to replicate what happened. So I wasn't able to secondarily verify that, so believe that however you will. But 85 Days, the book, also supports this theory to some degree, because when Sirhan has done the deed, quote unquote, he seems dazed. He seems super out of it. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's kind of just like blankly staring as people beat up on him. He's super distressed, like he only acknowledges pain. And that's only after a certain amount of time, so hypnotism might have worn off, or who knows. As well as Sirhan still maintains that he doesn't remember any of the assassination. Like, he doesn't remember before, he doesn't remember during, and he doesn't remember after. He only remembers in the police station later, after he was done. So, what is there against this theory? Well, no one has produced a hypnotist. No one has produced how this would actually happen, at least in any official capacity. And it could frankly apply to anyone. This is another, it could have been MK Ultra. Like, sure, but there's not even like a causal alleged link. That makes it the perfect crime. And my least favorite, okay, I know a lot of people like this one, at least in my research, but this is like a nothing one to me. There's the woman in the polka dot dress. This is a woman in a polka dot dress, after it happens, says like, we shot Kennedy, woohoo, we shot Kennedy, we got him. And then someone asks her, well, who do you shoot? And she says, Senator Kennedy. And she's allegedly scrubbed from all records just for no reason, because some FBI agent or CIA agent, one of the two, will submit like an official report into investigating this person and it just disappears. She was totally obscured by the government. I don't know. It's just a nothing burger to me, but it pairs well with a lot of other theories. Oh yeah, so let's make some fun combinations, and I'll explain my reasoning. So, a fan favorite is, all of these basically involve the polka dot dress girl. I'll just say that. Even though she's effectively a nothing burger, it pairs super well. Like, fun combination number 1. Let's say the girl in the polka dot dress hypnotized Sirhan. So this would be the polka dot dress girl as a handler, which is kind of the vibe that I got from a lot of this. If you're gonna subscribe to anything outside the official story, is the polka dot dress girl is basically a handler that I see. Like, oh, we got him. Like, who's she working for? The CIA, the Soviets, the FBI? Well, I mean, you already have a former FBI agent there, so that guy could have been the second gunman. William Barry could have been the second gunman, allegedly. But I mean, when you're working off of, you know, evidence as unclear as a Kennedy assassination, it could be a lot of things. Another one that might hold some sway, but also isn't really backed up by anything, but I could see happening, is Caesar was bought by the feds. You know, maybe LBJ or some other political candidate or political rival or some other person like the Soviets. It doesn't even have to be a person. I mean, he didn't really need much of a reason to do it, but if you know anything about like JFK or like even Epstein in the modern day, it's super plausible that he's just bought by some government agency, whether that be domestic or foreign, and he just does it because, you know, passion and money is a really good combination. Why did I write this one down? So the other schizo one that kind of combines the two beforehand is that Sirhan and Caesar are both victims of MK Ultra or hypnotism or some mind control program, and Polka Dot's the handler or like the hypnotist or something. She's there to make sure everything goes off without a hitch. She can disappear from the records later. It's so stupid. Okay, but to contribute to the conversation, I have some new ones that I will not add any supporting evidence to, and I will also not explain beyond the ideas that I have in my head. Feel free to question them or not. I mean, let's go. What did I write down? Okay, Teamsters did it. This is one of my favorite alternative ones that I haven't really seen many people suggest. He fought Jimmy Hoffa a lot, and he got him arrested on pretty legitimate, but also kind of weak terms. It's like getting Al Capone for tax evasion. Like, you know he's done some terrible stuff, but you can't get him on it, so you get him on something minor just to get him into prison and out of there. But also, it's a union, so unions are great for workers, but as, like, political entities, they're really prone to corruption. Like any organization above 3 people, Teamsters especially, I know this from personal experience. It's maybe they bought Caesar, or it was one of their operatives. Operatives, they're an extra governmental organization. They're so big, they're too big to fail. Another one, LBJ did it. You know, this probably is Caesar was bribed to do this somehow. A lot of these are just like bribing Caesar or the second gunman, because the second gunman is kind of the most acceptable one, quote unquote. It's the one that has the most reasonable doubt that you could kind of buy into it, because just like every Kennedy assassination, there's a lot of gray area on what this is about, mainly because I'm just using Caesar because he's like the most apparent. Like, RFK Jr. believes that he did it. Not that that's very high praise, but I'm gonna just use Caesar, but Caesar is also interchangeable with anyone who you believe could be the second gunman. Oh, but yeah, LBJ did it. He didn't like Kennedy to begin with. He had that whole thing about bullying him out of VP, and mainly all he did after he got assassinated was just a show so people wouldn't catch on. Or the other schizophrenic one is Humphrey did it. The person who he was running against in the election, who was already beating him and had a plausible chance of beating him, but he just wanted to secure his victory. He bribed Caesar, he hypnotized someone, or any one of these organizations could have bribed the polka dot dress girl, and she could have Manchurian candidated all of them. But that is the basic overview of the RFK Sr. assassination and its theories. And now I can proudly say this was the first video that I made off of the suggestion from a viewer. So if you want that to be you, I would leave a comment, I would leave a like, I would subscribe. You know, it always helps me out. I'm not asking you for money, just make the number go up so I can feel better about myself. It's an ego thing. And you can grow and find a community of people just like yourself who are just esoteric enough to be here, but also just normal enough that I haven't started talking about the weird stuff yet. We'll filter the wheat from the chaff when I start talking about the really weird people. But anyway, like, comment, and subscribe. It means a lot. And I most importantly want to thank you for watching. Any time you give me, any bit out of your day is much appreciated. I like making these for art purposes. This is effectively my way of making art because I'm no good at drawing, even though I try. But anyway, I won't keep you any longer. I know you value your time. So thanks for watching. And to the one person who I know was expecting the Francis E. Deck video this week, I did not make one because I got a suggestion. So expect a Francis E. Deck video soon. Bye.